All right, well, good morning, everybody. How are you doing today? Good, yeah, I like that enthusiasm. All right, awesome. So, what did we talk about last time? Exactly. Exactly. What was some of that investment advice? The beat the market part, not terribly cheap. What? I'm sorry. Diversity? Yeah. Because you want to avoid what? Remember? Correlated risk. Correlated risk. Awesome. What's another bit of advice I gave you? Avoid high fees. Sorry, what was that? Avoid high fees. Why should you avoid high fees? Because you can find ones that are cheaper. Oh, but like the high fee one's better? No, it's a not exactly, right? Some of them want account. Some of what? Yeah, an IRA, and go after the index. Those are going to be diversified, at least within the United States. I mentioned in passing, you also want to make sure that you diversify outside of the United States. So there are international index funds as well. So you just buy two different index funds, U.S. one, international one, and you're pretty well diversified. And also because they're index funds, they're really cheap. Remember, we talked about this, how you can actively trade. Actively trading doesn't, on average, yield better results than passive trading, than just like buying a cross section of the whole damn thing and just holding on. So that's why you should avoid high fees, because you're paying extra for basically nothing. What's another bit of advice I gave you? Yes, Francis. Uh huh. And how they're like, there's a larger risk. Exactly, exactly. Why is it that when there's a higher risk, there's a higher return? Yeah, go ahead. I would say it's kind of like compensating for the fact that it's a high risk. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Right? It's compensation. It's like compensating differentials in a lot of ways, right? That some jobs just suck, and in order to get people to do them, you have to pay them more. Some investments are likely to blow up in your face, and so in order for people to take down that risk, you have to pay them more. So it's exactly the same concept, right? It's exactly that same idea. And so there are going to be high risk things out there. If you see a high return, understand it's going to be high risk. If you see a low return, you can take solace in the fact that it is at least low risk. In fact, some of these platforms, there's something called junk bonds you can buy, which are high risk loans to like companies that are probably about to fail. And these platforms will hide the junk bonds because they're concerned that their customers will see the high rates of return and start buying them. Like, oh, this is obviously what I should do. And it's like, because quantifying risk is a lot harder to do, and so you have to sometimes dig around a little bit to find the bonds. Okay. Uh, there. So it could be good, but they're likely not be good at all. And finally, I gave you one more piece of advice. Yes, I did. Yeah, so that was part of that, right? Like you want to invest in bonds later because they're safer.
About compound returns and buying and holding.
Yeah, yeah. What are compound returns? Like, what does that mean? Let's specifically say compound returns. What? Compound returns build wealth. Compound returns build wealth. Rule of 70. Why should you buy and hold? What does buy and hold mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Make a purchase and then you just hold on. Right? And you don't pay much attention. You don't freak out. We recently had a huge stock market collapse because Trump created a whole bunch of tariffs. Now he's walked back, not all of those tariffs, but a big hunk of them. It's still really high, right? If you establish a 10% tariff on everything, that's still pretty high. It's like normally we're like below 8%. Like even going back to like the 60s, it was below 8%. So a 10% one is still pretty high, but it's a lot lower than the 40s and 50s we saw. So you just held on. We saw the stock price fall a lot, and they go back up. And that's an extreme version of the fluctuations that are going to happen over the years and decades of your life. Buy and hold, because you don't care about today's fluctuation or next week's fluctuation or even next year's fluctuation. You care about the long run trend. Any questions? Best thing you can do is invest as soon as you can. So occasionally, I know, money is tight because you were students. I remember those years. But if you happen to be able to scrounge together some money, the minimum amount necessary to open an IRA, which I can't remember what it is, but go find a cheap stock index, put in that. Vanguard has famously cheap ones, but other investment firms have them as well. So do a little research, put money in there, and then just. I've heard that you should log on like every few years because there's a danger that the organization will think you're dead if you don't log on, and then the government can seize it because it's like not being used. So, don't completely ignore it, but maintain some sort of activity. Okay, so that's about what you do with the money, but we haven't talked about how you get the money. And that's what we're talking about today. Specifically, we're talking about why are you here? Why are you here taking this class? And by the way, it's really important you don't lie. A lot of my examples don't work if you lie. It's really important you're honest. Why are you taking this class? Yeah, go ahead, Taylor.
I need the credit.
You need the credit. Why do you want the credit?
So I can graduate.
Why do you want to graduate?
So I can go to college after this one.
Oh, you just love to learn?
No.
No?
So I can get a good job. Right?
You get a good job. There it is. Thank you. Oh my God. We got there. Yeah. Right. And by good job, I assume that you mean one that pays well.
Yeah.
Right. Hence the idea of how do I get this money that I can invest in the first place? Okay. So I assume that's the more or less the story for all of you. Am I right? I know occasionally I get a student, I really do love to learn. The vast majority of you are trying to build credentials so you can earn more money in the future. So this is taking up a fair amount of your time. These are prime years of your life. It's stressful. It's expensive. It costs time and money and effort. I'm sure you have looked at the numbers that demonstrate to you that this is indeed a good idea. How many of you have seen the numbers? Because you're told that if you have more education, you make more money. How many of you have seen the data to back that up? Raise your hand if you've seen that data. So let's take a pause that no one has raised their hand. Even though you are making major life decisions, it's going to be really awkward if I show you data and it turns out that this whole thing is a farce. So let's start with the good news. It's not a farce. But seriously, if you're going to make this major life decision, maybe you should look at it. If everyone tells you, oh, if you go to college, you earn more money. It's like, happens to be true, but it's something that I'm surprised more people don't check beforehand to make these major life decisions. So this was displaying earlier, and now it's not displaying. Present. Maybe it's powering up or something. I think that the so this is really stupid because it was showing earlier and then it wasn't. I have a whole thing planned. Just start hitting it, David. It'll work. All right, what am I going to do? I'm going to bring this up and bring it down again. Okay. How much more What do you intend to do long term? You intend to get your bachelor's degree and then stop? Does anyone intend to go beyond bachelor's degree? I intend to go beyond bachelor's degree. A few of you do. To what? What degree are you eventually going to go for?
I'm gonna try to get a master's.
Master's degree? Master's? Yeah? Doctorate in finance? Awesome. So many of you have like, that for 4 years, that's not enough, right? You got to go even further than that. Why do you want to go that far? Okay. So naturally, you have to too, right? It's like back when people went, well, my dad was a carpenter, I got to be a carpenter now. That's how it works. Well, good news is that not only if you get a college degree, you earn more money. See, it came up. But if you go higher up, you also tend to earn more money too. So there is good justification for this. And this, of course, is not capturing the things that are hard to measure. Like the nature of work, for example. But not only do you earn more money, but the chance that you are unemployed goes down. So not only are you making more money, but you have less downtime. Oops, that's really dark. Well, we can enjoy this anyway. I'll turn it back on. Go for it. So, appreciate. So right now you are at some college, no degree. Soon, hopefully very soon, you'll get an associate's degree. So you get a little bit of a bump there. But the one that you're really after is this one, bachelor's degree. These, by the way, are median usual weekly earnings. So you want to multiply by roughly 50. That gives you an idea of how much money you make. And this is nationwide numbers, so it's going to be higher for this area because the cost of living is higher, so they're paying more to compensate. And then master's degree, you get a bit of a bump. Does anyone know the difference between a professional and a doctoral degree? Yeah.
A professional degree is like, for example, a law degree or like medical, like an actual medical doctor.
Yeah, tied to a particular job.
Yeah, where doctoral degree is tied to, I guess, a subject kind of. Like you can get your doctorate in almost
Finance or economics or English literature. Some are more recommended than others. Note that this is sort of why like people think of like do you professional then doctorals. Like these are kind of two different tracks. That's why like the earnings go down. I don't know why they list doctoral first. Probably because doctoral on average take longer to get than professional degrees. Maybe that's why. I'm not really sure. But yeah, professional degrees are kind of like law degrees or medical degrees. So unsurprisingly, they make a fair amount of money. And doctoral degrees might be, any number of subjects, whether it's chemistry or economics or history or whatever. Okay. So here's my question for you. Why? Why is it that if you get more education, you not only make more money, you're also less likely to be unemployed? Why is it that your employability goes up just because you get more education? What's going on?
I think maybe increase skilling. Like the more education you have, the more skills that you have. It's with especially like I don't know if it's like a niche skill or something that someone might need as opposed to having a less than a high school diploma. A lot of people work those jobs.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about two theories as to why. There's maybe I think I got 5 or 6 different theories out there in the literature. They're all important to varying degrees. But we're going to focus on 2. And we're going to call your suggestion, Josiane, the human capital. Does anyone know what human capital is? Well, let's go back. Do you remember what capital is? What's capital? What's capital, Emily?
It's something that helps you. I know you have to use it more than 3 times as much as it usually
With 3 years.
yeah, or something, and it's something that you use over and over again.
Uh-huh.
In business, like transportation van, but it can't be like, I think electricity.
Yeah, because you can't use the same bolt over and over again.
So I feel like human capital would be like a worker that comes in over again.
So close, so close. Keep in mind, so back up a little bit, it's not that it can be used over and over again, that's true, but it's also used to produce something. Right? So important we emphasize that. But I like that you focus on that durability aspect. It can be used over and over again. Human capital is not the person. Human capital is the stuff in people's heads that make them more productive. So you can think of, say, somebody with a medical degree. They know stuff about the human body and drug interactions and what clues tell you what about what's going on with them. That makes them more productive. That is capital in that classic sense of the word. It's durable in the sense of they can use that knowledge over and over and over and over again, and it helps them provide a service. Help people get healthier. That's a genuine service. If you are an engineer, you develop certain skills about understanding how things fit together and how you can build things and how they don't fall down, and that is knowledge that you can use over and over and over again. But it's not just things that you can learn in school. We all have developed some kind of general, say, social skills that we interact with one another. And that helps you be more productive. Because if you have awkward conversations with people, it's hard to work with them. And if it's hard to work with somebody, it's hard to work and produce something together. You might have somebody at your own work where you're like, I don't want to talk to that person because that person has terrible social skills. And as a result of you not wanting to talk to them or interact with them, then the organization is less productive. So it doesn't have to be something in school. It doesn't have to be related to a major. But the point is, we have all this stuff in people's heads. It can be skills. It can also be attributes. So some people are smarter than others. That's human capital. Some people are naturally more charismatic. That's a form of human capital. Traits about yourself. When we talk in terms of economic development, we might say, well, it's really important. Just as we want physical capital, we should also want to develop individuals' human capital. And that's when you get this idea of education is really important. And there's going to be diminishing marginal returns to that. Knowing how to add is really, really valuable. Knowing how to read is really, really valuable. Knowing how to do calculus, valuable but not as valuable. We good so far? Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, would you use this to refer to like an individual and their human capital, or is it more of like a broad term?
I would say that I want to build out my human capital. So I would refer to human capital not as the individual, but as the actual skills and attributes we're talking about. And typically we focus on skills because the attributes, the traits about yourself aren't things that you can necessarily change. But you can obviously build skills. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so according to this theory, what you major in should matter because you develop different skills in different majors, and therefore we would expect some skills to be valuable in the workplace and some not. Right? That said, though, no matter what you major in, you all develop some valuable skills. What are some skills that you develop that you are that are valuable no matter what you major? What are some skills that everyone gets because they get through college? Yeah,
Time management, I guess.
time management, really important one, right? Absolutely. Especially too, because what's the big difference between college and high school? You pick your classes and the time, right? You have so much free time as far as like, you have so much unstructured time, is how I should put it, right? Because you come to this class and then like, I don't know what you do afterward. I'm not making sure you get to your next class. I don't know if you have a next class. I don't really care, right? You figure it out, right? And so because so much is put on you, you have to develop those time management skills. Because in practice, of course, bosses don't want to have to micromanage you either, right? It's expensive, it's time consuming. So if you can be in such a place where you can do this, learn to do this stuff yourself, that's valuable. That makes you more productive. What's another skill you might like? Regardless of major. Kind of concerning that you're all drawing blanks. Communication skills, such as like not like writing, like talking, right? Those are all communication skills. Yeah, absolutely. Like learning how to write a professional email to professor. I sometimes get weird emails about like, "Hey, dude, what's up?" I'm like, "What are you doing? Who are you talking to?" Okay. So yeah, so we would expect that regardless of major, people get these nice productive things. They become more productive. The end is not great. But as noted, of course, what you major in should also matter. So do you think what you major in matters for earnings? Yeah, it absolutely does. How many of you have seen the data on that? Oh, great. Where'd you see that data?
I don't know where. Like it's just general.
It's just yeah, there's little things like these are the top majors. So one place I recommend going to is the New York Federal Reserve. They have great data on this. And one thing I really like about the New York Federal Reserve is that not only will it give you data based on the major, it will also give you the unemployment rate based on the major, and it will break down the wages from early career to mid career. So if you want to know, well, I'm fresh out of college or I'm pretty early in my career, how much can I expect to make? Versus like when I get into like my 30s and 40s, how much can I expect to make? You can even say how much have a graduate degree. So how likely is a particular major going to go on to get a graduate degree? You want me to hit the like so you can see a little easier? Oh, that's the other way. There we go. And there's even the underemployment rate. Oh, I love the underemployment rate. Does anyone know what the underemployment rate is? Yeah. Nope. It is because you have to think in terms of the major, right? So the element is the student with the major. Nick?
When you could get a better job with the skills you have.
Yeah, close to it, right? It's the percent of people with this major who have a job, but that job does not require a college degree. That's how they define underemployment. For example, the major that most often is, so it's supposed to represent people, oh, I majored in English literature and now I work at Starbucks. That's conceptually what it's representing. The major that most often has underemployment rates. Anyone guess? Yeah. It's no, but its department is right next to the business department. Nope. Nope. I don't even know what the art department is. Criminal justice. Criminal justice have by far the highest underemployment rates. $67%. Does anyone know why? What do criminal justice majors go on to do? What? No. Some of them do, certainly. But many of them go on to become police officers. And you do not need a college degree to be a police officer. But they get a college degree and become police officers because if you have a college degree, it's easier to advance. So there's a little bit of like, I bring up this example because the numbers can be a little deceiving. It's like, oh, well, the criminal justice is a dead end major. It's like, well, no, because like the reason why this underemployment rate is so high is because in order to like, if you want to become a detective or a captain or something else, like you kind of need a college degree, but you also actually need to be a police officer for a while, and that's just them making some longer term plan that hasn't paid off yet. Yeah.
I want to share with
So this is the percent of people who have this major that go on to get an advanced degree. Right. So you see, like, oh, that's miscellaneous technologies. What is that? But like medical technicians, 22% might go on to get a more advanced degree. Okay. So we can see, like, accounting does pretty well. Aerospace engineering does really well. In fact, let's put it by this. Here we go. So you will see, so what are some of the highest paid majors? What do they all have in common? Well, not all of them, but pretty damn close. All these are engineering with the exception of computer science up here. There's physics right here. I live even miscellaneous engineering. I'm just putting together, I don't know, whatever. But finance is pretty big. Also, I feel like I should note, boom, does economics, tied with finance. We're doing pretty damn well, right? That's pretty good. And then you scroll all the way down. What do you think is going to be closer to the bottom? What majors? Education. Education majors typically do not do well. So we got foreign language, performing arts, early childhood educations typically don't do that great. General education. Some of that is like compensating differentials, right? Like lots of people like working with little kids. They're cute and they're really cute when you don't have to worry about putting them to bed at night. So, or they wake up screaming in the morning. So okay, more or less what we would expect. But now we have a little bit of a puzzle. Let's see if I can-
How is education at the bottom?
How's what?
Like, why is education at the bottom? Like, who get education becomes like,
Yeah.
so
So David, you might not know this, but teachers don't get paid that much.
yeah.
So, like, why is it puzzling that education majors are toward the bottom?
So then, like, don't you know that's where you decide your major?
Yeah. So, like, you're wondering, like, why do people major in education knowing they will not get paid that much?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, who says they're not getting a job in education? Are you talking about the underemployment rate, 22%?
Oh, yeah. This is not the.
This is not the no. This is how much they get paid.
Oh,
22% end up in a job that doesn't require a college degree. That doesn't mean they're not working in education.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Worth mentioning. I thought you were like, I don't know what you're thinking. Okay, so more or less what we would expect. Let's see what, the one I always want to check though is philosophy. There's philosophy. So, has anyone taken a philosophy course? Yeah. What do they do in the philosophy course?
I'm thinking right now.
Okay, great. So what? Because like the education output for philosophy majors is pretty good, right? It's not way at the bottom. It's not terrible though. 48,000 a year. That's not terrible. What practical things have you learned?
Yeah, well, a lot of you make it like
Okay. Like how what works? Like how machines work?
No.
What do you mean it's been a while? You said you're in it now. Okay. Well, what are you covering now? Okay, like logic. Logic. Okay. Yeah. So that logic stuff, that's pretty handy. I'll give you a hint though. Most philosophy is not that. That's like introductory. That's like the lowest level of philosophy that you enter into. A more advanced philosophy typically involves reading books written by old dead white guys trying to figure out what a good life is. Sometimes if they figure out they exist or not. Right? I don't know. Do I exist? I don't know. Let's figure out if I exist. That's granted not a perfect description of philosophy because I'm not like someone who majored in philosophy. I took like a basic courses in philosophy, but like a lot of philosophy is not that practical. Sometimes they have to write books explaining why parts of the philosophy is practical, which to me is pretty instructive. Like, no, I have to explain why this is practical. It's like you're already kind of like, digging yourself out of a hole right with that. So the question is like, philosophy has some useful information, not terribly practical. How practical, though, is commercial art and graphic design? How practical is that? Like, do you learn some actual skills? I say no? I think you do, right? Yeah. Right? That's valuable. Like, having things look well and presentable, that's important. That advertising works. Having things that are well organized is helpful for customers. So here we have something that has very clear practical skills. Here we have something that has very few practical skills, and yet they get paid the same amount. What's going on? Lots of human capital here, very little capital here, same outcome. And this leads us to theory number 2. Signaling theory. Julian, let's imagine you worked at a company, you're in charge of HR, you're trying to hire somebody, maybe some receptionist or someone, you just want someone who is careful and is smart. That's your goal. You don't know me at all. And so I come to you and I say, hey, you should hire me. I'm smart. I super duper swear. You gonna hire me? Oh, I don't have any credentials, but I do have a very loud voice, and I can say very confidently, I'm smart. I don't know, right? Not very compelling. Why not?
It's not much. I can't see it.
You can't see it. Ooh, interesting, right? You can't see intelligence. How can you see intelligence? Oh, okay. Oh, that's what you want. Hold on. Let me write that down. I am. There we go. Now it's written down. Is that compelling? What the hell do you want out of me? Why is that not compelling? Why was that not compelling? Yeah.
Because anybody can lie.
Yeah, right? Talk is cheap. Anyone can say that. Anyone can say this smart. Who cares? You can say you're smart all day. You need to prove it, right? That's why you ask for credentials. You want some sort of evidence that you're smart. Anyone can say it. How many of you have read a philosophy book? Or any sort of like Plato's Republic or Kant or any of that things? No. Let me tell you, there's a reason why people typically don't, unless they're assigned to. It's really hard. It's written by old dead white guys from hundreds of years ago who had different ways of saying things. They're trying to figure out if they exist, and it's kind of boring, and it's kind of tedious. It's really tedious sometimes, and nobody is going to read it for fun, or very few people will. And what a philosophy major is somebody who not only did that and then wrote papers about it, but did that over and over and over again. Imagine alternative conversations, Julian, we had, where I like, look, I swear I'm super smart. You know I'm smart because I majored in philosophy, and I had to write a bunch of papers trying to figure out if I exist or not. It was really boring, it was really practical, but I did very well in it. Imagine what I can do for you when it matters. Is that more compelling? Is that a bit more? We have some data. Which majors are the smartest on campus? Top of the list for an average IQ of 133, no surprise there, physics. Mathematics at 130. And what's third? Philosophy majors. They're a smart group, right? That logic stuff, that's important, and it sticks with them, but it gets harder and harder and harder as they go on. Also, too, economics is pretty high up there. Look at that. 128. In other words, one theory as to why when you get more education, you get more money, is because now you have a degree, and the degree is evidence that you are somebody that someone wants to hire. Talk is cheap. But signaling theory, and I'm going to take the signaling theory, I'm going to stick it right over here. A signal is an observable trait used to show you have an unobservable trait. In other words, you are demonstrating that you are smart. So, a good signal has two qualities. Good signal is hard to send. If you lack the trait, is easy, or at least easier to send if you have the trait. Being able to complete a 4-year degree signals good things about you. Yeah. Thank you. I've been all day today with stuff like that. I forgot to say not. Earlier in my class today, in a different class, I was like, that's an important part. Excluding the not. Unobservable, thank you. So, what does college show about us? College. So this, by the way, is from Bryan Caplan. Bryan Caplan is an economist. I mentioned him before when I did rational irrationality. Bryan Caplan is an economist who argues that much of college is about signaling. And he identifies 3 things that college signals. So, 3 things that that employers like. One, we've already talked about it. Intelligence. People who are typically pretty smart have, I don't want to say an easy time, but an easier time in college. People who have trouble understanding certain concepts, whose abilities are in other areas, have a hard time in college. If you can get through college, you are more likely to be smart than others. If you can compare people who completed college with people who didn't complete college, the averages are going to be, the IQ of those who completed college is probably going to be high. So far? True. But it's not just about intelligence. Conscientious. Conscientious. It's a hard word to say. What is that? What does that mean? Yeah.
Something to do with consciousness, maybe.
It's more like being aware of what you're doing. It's doing things well and thoroughly. So people who are conscientious are people who are going to be checking their work, are people who are going to read things carefully, are people that will get the critical detail right. If you want to be a lawyer, this is really, really important. Because ciphering through lots of documents and figuring out exactly how some sentence is structured such that this is what the law is really important. And checking all the boxes you need to check is really important. Some people say, oh, it's not a big deal if you turn things in late in the real world. It's a really big deal if you turn things in late in the law world. If the judge says something is due on this particular date and you are a day late, you can be sued for malpractice. The judge will be like, well, I guess you don't have an argument. Tough shit. And so that kind of attention to detail is really valuable. And it's something that you can show that you have in college. Happens all the time. How often have you got a question wrong because you didn't read the question carefully? Probably a few times. I know what's happened in my class. How many times did you forget about a date for an exam or homework? That's not about being smart. It's about paying attention to details. And that is a valuable trait to have. Any questions about this one? Also, employers want somebody who can conform to expectations. They want someone who is a team player. You are encouraged to think for yourself. I think that's a great thing to think for yourself. But you don't want to think so much for yourself that you're like this weirdo doing something totally different while everyone else is working on the project. You need to be able to adapt to different circumstances. You need to be the kind of person who is willing to conform a little bit, who will do what the boss tells you to do, even if you don't want to do it. That willingness to conform, that is a valuable trait to have. And that's something that you encounter over and over in your classes. Because my rules in my class are not the same as other professors' rules, are they? What are some of the other rules that your professors have that are not me that I don't have? What are some things your other professors require you to do that I don't? Yeah.
One of my classes cover like a
Uh-huh.
we have like 8 exams.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, admission drops. tutors, because 4 of them are in-class and 4 of them are.
Oh, if you take one exam.
Yeah, and then she drops the tutors.
I see. I see. It's a lot of. I wouldn't do that. But so that's like a different rule you have to adapt to. Like, and then well, these exams are dropped in this class. Professor Yumber doesn't drop the exams, but they do it. He does adjust the weight. Someone else doesn't even do that, right? And it's annoying. You have to keep track of all that and all these little due dates and willing to conform. And I, for example, don't like it if you message me on Blackboard Mail because I personally find Blackboard Mail to be stupid and annoying. I'm sure other professors require you to submit to Blackboard Mail. Say if you want to contact me, use the Blackboard Mail system. Does anyone have anyone who does that? Unless I get people who require it. Yeah. So now you have to. What does Professor? What do you want? It's annoying, but if you're willing to conform to expectations, you can signal, hey, I can adapt because I got through college, and everyone who's gone through college knows that this is a standard thing. Different professors have different rules. You have to kind of work with that. Also, just be willing to go through college, to walk along the path that millions before you have walked along, shows your willingness to conform to societal expectations. You know, be some weirdo who's like, no, I'm going to show how smart I am and how intelligent and how conscientious I am by starting this little business. And that can be helpful, but you're also signaling that you're a weirdo because most people don't do that. Again, sometimes that's an advantage, but for a lot of jobs, it's not. It's also notable that school goes on for 4 years. Why? Yeah.
It shows a level.
Shows commitment, right? It's also a lot harder to fake conscientiousness if you have to do it for 4 years. Right? If you told me, oh, you can get a great job doing something, you just don't have to be conscientious. You don't have to be attention to detail for a month. It's like I could do that, even people who are not that way. And therefore, this is value. Right? The whole point is if you have all 3 of these traits inherently as to who you are, getting a 4-year degree is not that difficult. If you lack any one of these traits, it gets hard. If you lack lots of traits, it gets really hard. And we have a separate equilibrium. It's exactly the same scenario I gave you way at the beginning of the semester when we talked about ordeals. The kind of person who is willing to go through the ordeal is probably innocent. The kind of person who refuses the ordeal, probably guilty. Called a separating equilibrium. People sort themselves. Any questions? Great. This is why, by the way, you will sometimes have classes where you are not learning anything practical. Like, I don't know, calculus. There are certain jobs where calculus will come up, and you should learn some calculus. Engineers, for example. But most of you had to take calculus. How many of you took calculus? Right? Great. To all of you. And you might be wondering, when will I use this? And then your professor might have given you some sort of, well, maybe it'll come up with this way. Let me tell you, you will never use it. Right? There's going to be some of you that will, but the vast majority of you will not. And you might think, what the hell was the point of that? I'm like, well, because it's hard. And by going through this, you're showing that you're intelligent and you're conscious, you're willing to conform to expectations. Right? The process is what's important. This is why, by the way, a college degree is useful even if you don't remember a damn thing that you learned. You'll struggle to remember what happened at the beginning of the semester. And then you forgot about it. Right? And it seems like, well, if it was all about human capital, this is a huge damning thing of human capital. We know most students forget a lot of what they learned after class. But that would be like saying, well, human capital is not a thing. It is somewhat a thing. Right? All these things matter a little bit. But evidence for signaling is I've shown I can do it. I don't need to remember it. If that was the case, that makes sense under the context of signaling. It doesn't make sense in the context of human capital. It makes sense in the context of signaling. when you apply for a job, they look at your degree. They don't ask you have you do a test, see how much you remember. They sometimes do, but usually not. Say, oh, I see you're an engineer and you also took a class in music history. Tell me something about music history. Any questions? This idea of these two different versions, these two competing theories, have policy implications. Because keep in mind, the value of a signal is relative to what others say. Let's imagine everyone had a college degree, like literally the entire country, everyone had a college degree. Would a college degree be special? No. Would they say, oh, you must be really smart, you have a college degree? Would anyone say that? No, why not? Because everyone has it, right? It's only valuable because it's relatively rare. What percent of Americans after the age of 25 have a college degree? We always have to do after 25, right? It takes time.
35%?
I think that sounds about right. Well, it's roughly a third. Let me check. Yeah, I got about 37.7%, roughly. So a little more than a third, but a little less than 40%. Right? Not even half. What percent had a college degree 100 years ago? Anyone want to take a guess?
1%.
So back in 1925,
1%.
it was 2%. 2%? Did you say 2%? Roughly 37%. Huge change. If you had a college degree back in 1925, what do you think employers thought when you walked in the room? Yeah, like holy crap. Right? That's so unusual. You must be, maybe they're thinking, wow, you must be really rich because you can afford to go to college, right? Because it's expensive, right? Not just the tuition, but the opportunity cost. But it's also like not many people do it. That really stands out. It's a lot like right now if someone has some sort of like prize, it's really rare. Oh my goodness, that's a big deal. Now, you walk in the eyes, they have a college degree, you're like, get in line. Right? The value diminishes because the more people have it, then the less special the signal is. It sort of implies that it's not hard to send anymore. It's like you don't put participation trophies on your resume. They're easy to get. Thus, the policy implications. Because if lots of people have a college degree, how then do you stand out? How do you stand out to employers? Yeah, way back.
Internships?
You get internships, right? Experience. Another great way.
A good resume?
A good resume, but that's just, but that you're just about like what's in the resume, right? You can double major. Getting a higher degree, right? That's what I was going for, right? But all those things apply, right? You have to do something extra. Does anyone know what an arms race is? Yeah. From the Cold War. What about it? You can give it to me from the Cold War.
Okay. I guess it was between the US and the Soviet Union. They never really actually like fought each other like face, but the arms race was basically which country could make the most advanced weapons. So whenever like one country was like maybe come up with a certain nuclear weapon, other than China. To was good.
Right? And the winner was based on who had more and better weapons. Note, both of these qualities are relative. So you make 100 nukes, then I'll make 100 nukes. Then you make 200 nukes, then I make 200 nukes. You make 300, then I make 300. Then you make 400, then I make 401. Right? Then you have 402. Shit, I'll make 500. Right? It goes back and forth. And all of this time, where are we spending our resources? More weapons over here, more weapons over here, more weapons over here, more weapons over here. If we all agreed, hey, let's just have as many weapons, then the winner would be exactly the same. Right? Because it's based on who has more. And we would save a bunch of resources. Similarly, there's an arms race in education. Oh, everybody has, a lot of people have this degree. Well, then I have to have more degrees. Or I have to have an additional internship. Ooh, it's hard to get an internship. I'll make it unpaid. Right? Because that stands out better. That's something. Right? But now we're entering this in. Now, rather than race being, military might and a country's treasure, we're spending your time and your money to outdo somebody else, to outdo somebody else, to outdo somebody else, to outdo somebody else. It's an arms race, but for education. Exactly the same problem. And it leads to wasteful. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's wasteful from a society standpoint. That's a good point. Wow. Because if we all had half as many resources spent, then the relative value would be the same. We would just save a bunch of resources. All right, let's split it up then. So let's start with human capital. According to human capital theory, more education leads to a wealthier society. Pretty straightforward. If more people have skills, we can be more productive and we can have a better life. Okay, we good there? According to sibling theory, more education leads to poorer society. Because the education itself isn't doing anything, but we're spending resources just trying to outdo one another. And so there's an opportunity cost to that. Now, granted, both theories matter. I'm not saying that there's no human capital developed in school. There certainly is. But we also shouldn't say the sibling value is zero. The sibling value is not zero. It's something larger than zero. Caplan argues it's like an 80-20 split. Most of it's signaling, and there's a little bit of human capital. You can disagree or agree with that. I'm kind of agnostic for all purposes of this conversation. But we should not pretend that it's all one or all the other. It's going to be a mixture of both. It's going to vary based on degree. There's a lot of signaling. There's like a lot of human capital development in engineering, for example. Yeah, a lot of signaling in philosophy.
Is the human capital theory basically saying that the resources are not really being wasted?
No, it's like an investment. Think of the human capital theory as literally investment. You are making yourself more productive because you're developing valuable skills, and that is making society wealthier because you're more productive. The buildings don't fall over. Right? That's really helpful. Right? We don't want buildings to fall over. But the signaling theory is like, look, and this is crucial, college really isn't adding anything. In its extreme version, and it's helpful to think in these terms of the extreme version. In the extreme version, it's not actually adding anything. You're just being able to now show something you always have. You always had. You were always smart. You were always conscious. You were always willing to conform. Now you can finally show it to others. Now you can put your money where your mouth is because talk is cheap. And so you had to spend resources, though, in order to do that, and that's what leads to the poor society. Yeah, David.
Can we just be like your time?
It's time and also money, right? Like, I don't work for free. No professor does. So you have to spend money in tuition, and even if you're not spending money in tuition, the government is, and that's money that could be used on something else. And I am dedicating time that I could be doing for something else that could be productive. I mean, let me tell you, just like if you're a weapons dealer, arms races are really profitable. And if you are selling education, the arms race of education is really handy. But it is not good for society. It does not. Does that answer your question? Yeah. This is like one of my favorite things to talk about because it's like really unintuitive, but it's really handy. Because understanding that some things are just for signaling, and it is not related to just education, it's related to lots of different things. For example, when you go to get a job, how do you dress? Professionally, right? Do you show up in jeans and a ripped shirt? No. Why? What is how you're dressed? What does that have to do with what job you want? What could that possibly have to do with it? Why do you have to make a first impression? It signals seriousness. It signals professionalism, right? It signals thoughtfulness. In other words, it shows that you are taking it seriously. You've seen this when you go on dates, and if the other person is not paying attention, what does that show about them? If the other person shows up late, what does that signal? Right? You have these terms: red flags, green flags. Is that green flags and yellow flags? Can't remember. I haven't been dating for a long time, so I don't know what the latest thing is. Right? But a red flag literally is just a signal. Right? This person yelled at the waiter. That's a red flag. Signals can be good, but signals can also be bad. If you submit an application and there's a bunch of typos on it, that's a bad signal. If you try to get a loan from a bank, but your credit score is really bad. Why is your credit score really bad? Because you have a lot of debt. That's a bad signal. That signals something bad about it. This was actually one of the ed puzzles. Somebody asked, why is it that if I have this huge amount of money, let's imagine I can borrow $5,000 put on my credit card. If I borrow $4,000, that actually dings my credit score. What the hell is with that? And the answer is because the kind of person who will borrow such a large percent of what they can, who would spend such a large percent of their credit, who would not max out, but nearly max out, is probably the kind of person who's not careful with their money. It sends a bad signal, and so your credit score goes down. On the other hand, if you are consistently really low, right, that signals restraint. I could spend a whole bunch of money, but I'm not. Right? And so your credit score goes up. Especially if you do it over and over and over and over again, because it's hard to fake that for a long period of time. It's all signaling. I bring this up because I've got a few minutes left. what we will be doing next class is we will be building the model for aggregate demand, aggregate supply, the model of our whole economy. I like to do the signaling lecture here because, like calculus, you will never use it. You will never use this model unless you like teach economics or you work at the Federal Reserve. There's a few other maybe jobs you might actually use it. But you in practice will not use it. Because while some of what I taught you is really practical, some of what I taught you here is signaling. And so you should still take it seriously even though you'll never use it. It's like the calc class. You got to show that you can do it. You will probably forget it. I expect most of you will forget it after the final's over. I'm not going to be upset. You just got to do the dance to show you can. Any questions? Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about the ECON study problem?
Oh, so I can't remember his evidence for this, but Bryan Caplan argues that if we had to divvy up, why is it that if you get more education, you make more money? If there's some of that is human capital, some of that is signaling. What percent is signaling? What percent is human capital? He estimates it's roughly 80% signaling and 20%.
Based on what?
So I'm going to have to pull out. He has a book. That's a great question. But he has a book called "The Case Against Education," which makes this argument and lays out one bit of evidence he has, and maybe this is where he gets the 80-20 split from an analysis of this data. Is he's like, look, there's something called the sheepskin effect. You saw it on the diagram, right? Was the people who like got like the people who have an associate's degree made some money, but the people who had a bachelor's degree made like a ton more. You saw there was like a huge jump up there. And it's like, what's with that? You can take that to the extreme, and you can look at people who almost complete their college degree, but don't. And so we call this the sheepskin effect because historically degrees, diplomas were printed on sheepskin. And so the idea is the sheepskin effect is like, okay, in both cases, they have basically the same amount of knowledge, right? Like maybe one person's a few classes shy, but basically the same amount of knowledge. They took the same classes. The only real difference is one has the degree and one doesn't. And the earnings gap between them is huge. Even though they have basically the same level of information, right? It's the same majors. They took basically all the same classes. There's just a few, like maybe some eds or something this person's missing. And they have a huge difference in earnings. Well, if it's all about human capital, they have basically the same human capital. So what's on there? But if it's all about, I can complete what I start and I can see things through, right? And I'm showing you I'm the kind of person that gets things done. That's the signaling story, right? That's what the degree does. And so you can get a sense of how big that gap is. And I think that's one of the pieces of evidence he uses. But I'm working purely off memory. I haven't looked at this stuff in a couple of years. Exactly. But if you want to borrow the book, I have it in my office. Any other questions? Okay. So with that in mind, I'll let you go. We're right at that time. And I will see all of you on Tuesday. I hope you have a great weekend.